Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nailogical podcast.
Happy Taco Tuesday.
Bad name. That takes too long to say.
What takes too long to say?
We need a rebrand. We could call this podcast something else.
What else would it be called?
Drama Tuesdays.
No, man.
Cristine, today I want to talk about some industry YouTube news. Mm-hmm. What's going on with the H3 podcast, BBTV, and the Tetris movie.
The Tetris movie. How'd that one get in there?
It's all connected. Have you seen Manifest?
Yes, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
Wonderful.
I'll explain why. But yeah, so big stuff going on in YouTube world that we think we can offer a bit of an opinion on.
We are YouTube people, so I guess that's why we'll talk about YouTube things.
Yeah, well, like
we have experience being on YouTube. Is this YouTube? Where am I? Who's this? Where?
We don't know Ethan and Hila. Like we go to YouTube events sometimes, or there was a period of time where we did, and I think they don't really. Anyway, the point is, you kind of became famous on YouTube around the same time they did.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we probably have similar experiences of MCNs and managers and agents sort of coming out of the woodwork offering you things. So I feel like we can offer some historical perspective on this whole issue of MCNs and
peak 2016, 27 YouTube. You're right. Yeah, we both kind of blew up around the same time in different niches, but experience
probably
some of the
not
same
a ton
things.
of audience overlap. Although I do
There's
see it.
a little bit. I know that. but first, can I tell you about what's going on this weekend?
What's going on?
Do you know what's going on? You tell me you don't know what's going on this weekend.
What's going on this weekend? Were we baking a banana bread?
No, even better. It's the launch of the Holo royalty polish. That's the custom polish designed by Holo Taco top tier customers. I know it's been a long time coming. They voted on it. They designed it late last year, and it's finally almost here, launching this weekend, Saturday, April 15th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be live streaming it. It'll be a big party. Custom designed by you guys. And our first ever loyalty, I'm confusing them. Our first ever Holo Taco loyalty customer appreciation sale is happening at the same time. So you can get the brand new royalty polish and shop everything else on the store with your exclusive discount depending on your tier. So the higher your tier in the Holo Taco loyalty program, the more you save during the sale. So all starts at the same time this Saturday. I'm very excited because you guys did this. Like I did nothing actually for this launch. It was all them. So I'm excited for you guys to launch your polish.
Yeah, that was a lot of words. Customer appreciation sale this Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay, ad read over?
It's my life. How this is an ad read? It's my life.
We need to disclose that as an ad read.
Sure. Whatever.
Okay. You want to get into it? Okay, so we're recording this Monday night. We just watched the H3 podcast where they really went into depth describing the sort of situation they're in, but it's still an evolving story. And anything situation we say here is just
cannot be held against us.
It's just our opinion on things. How about that?
Ethan has his opinion. We have our opinion. That's how it works on the internet. Do we need a line that says our opinion? Or we think we're good. We're good.
No, just don't sue us. So okay, how do we do a recap here? Last Friday, Ethan, people start noticing the H3 podcast YouTube channel.
Maybe we should say.
Which is the Howard Stern show of YouTube, right? It's the closest thing we have on YouTube to a Howard Stern, which is like it's one of the biggest podcasts in the world, hugely influential, at least in the YouTube space. I mean, YouTube's so democratized in different little pockets. It's not like anyone can be as ubiquitous as like a Howard Stern these days, but they're kind of the closest thing we have to that, which means like kind of edgy, controversial, cover drama, but like I find the show, I don't watch as consistently as I used to. I feel like it kind of got a little mean-spirited during the Frenemies days, but it's, there's lots of goofs and gaffs and laughs. It's a fun time, usually, but also sort of controversial and not everyone's cup of tea. Is that a good general description of the H3 podcast?
I think the only other technical thing I would offer is that when you say the word podcast, it's a bit of a different definition than the average person, like who's maybe listening to this podcast on Spotify.
I mean, the only people listening to this are people who like you.
Oh, what? What about you? They hate people who like me and people who hate Ben are listening to this.
No, they clearly have like a broad for
Yeah,
you.
sorry. I just mean like the H3 podcast, they live stream it on their YouTube channel. So it's a different type of audience than maybe when you're just thinking of like random
Sure, it's a
podcasts
live
on Spotify.
video
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly.
Okay, and so yeah, people noticed last Friday that they've turned off channel memberships. So like significant source of their revenue presumably is people just choosing to pay them $5 or more a month. People realize this is turned off, and Ethan tweets out that the multi-channel network they work with, BBTV, they realized had been skimming or stealing money from them for a long period of time.
Since December 2020.
Yeah, amounting to over $600,000 that they are saying they should not have taken, so that they had turned off memberships to try to try to resolve the situation.
Or to prevent further skimming.
Yes.
As per their language, yes.
Yeah, so that was sort of just
the initial reason, or the premise for why I think Ethan was explaining why he was telling people this at all, was because he wanted to offer an explanation for why he halted channel memberships.
yeah. So then he made 2 videos over the weekend on his personal channel, and then just had a podcast just tonight on Monday, which we just finished watching now, where he sort of describes the situation where, like, I think the first question is like, why is what is an MCN, and why is a channel like H3 working with an MCN? So multi-channel networks, back in like 2015, 16 YouTube, it was way more common to hear about MCNs, right? And basically, at that time, it wasn't like there wasn't such transparency and openness in terms of like how to get a channel monetized.
Or how to get sponsorships.
How to get
brands.
sponsorships,
Very
how
new.
to deal with copyright claims. So there were a bunch of companies that sort of hovered around creators like vultures, just basically saying, hey, come work with our company. We'll take care of a lot of that stuff for you. And hey, we might even be able to get you better ad rates, better sponsorships, and things like that, right? I feel like even by the time you were getting big on YouTube in 2016. 17, MCNs were already a really dirty word. That there was a reputation out there. There definitely was. There were a lot of YouTubers working with them, but there was already a perception that they could be predatory, locking in like very young and inexperienced creators into hard to get out of contracts. And I think people were increasingly saying like, what real value do these people bring? Because I feel like by 2017, 18, 19, I think there was more of a consensus that if you're a resourceful creator with money or like an agent or something, like there probably isn't need for an MCN at all.
And I remember that back in 2016, 17, there was like anytime we went to VidCon, you'd see booths by different NCNs, or different reps from NCNs would come up and try and talk to me or other creators at that time. And I'm always very kind of careful and conservative generally in business when I'm like considering an opportunity. And so immediately I was skeptical without even much reason to be skeptical, because I was brand new to this, so what do I know? But I'd ask around people and, in the industry and other friends that I'd made, and few people's experience was really positive at that time from working with an MCN from the larger creators that I'd spoken to. So it was that kind of caution that I exercised in interpreting any offers that we got from MCNs, which was like every week for a time. It was like almost every week there was a different MCN emailing us, and there still are some today that reach out, although they frame it as something else, and they say like, this is not an MCN anymore, and then they just say a bunch of other interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was kind of this mounting feeling after the 2016, 2017 era where larger creators were kind of concluding that it wasn't worth it for them to join an MCN.
And I think I could disclose this. We had conversations both with Defy Media and BBTV, hearing them out in terms of what they were proposing to potentially put your channel under their network. So for people who follow this news, like BBTV is the one in this case with Ethan right now that's being accused of stealing money, and Defy Media was the one that went bankrupt in 2018, and a bunch of creators just never got paid money.
Yeah, like 1.7 million wasn't paid out as a result of them going bankrupt.
This is a bit of a tangent, but something I haven't really heard in this sort of new discourse about MCNs lately is that it's not just that they were offering sponsorship money or help in managing channels, but a big value proposition they were making at this time in 2017-ish was that they could get you more ad revenue than Google could. I feel like this is very relevant, and a lot of people leave this detail out because to me, it seems like a lot of creators made a risk assessment or made a calculated risk to work with MCNs because MCNs were saying, hey, we'll get you better ad rates than Google is. And by doing that, you're giving over control of the monetization of your channel to a third party who isn't Google. And you're somewhat at the mercy of that company now in terms of when they pay you out.
No, you are at the mercy of that company.
Yeah, you have signed over monetization of your channel to somebody out, either for the promise of guaranteed payouts or a promise or assurance that you'll get better ad rates. Because I think this might sound confusing, and I'm not sure if this still even happens, but Google isn't putting an ad on every view of your video. Anytime anyone clicks on your video, for example,
sometimes
right?
There's unmonetized views.
Yeah,
correct?
so there's inventory of channel views that aren't having ads put on it. So I don't know if I need to be so specific as to say BBTV or Defy were promising this, but like a lot of these groups were suggesting like, hey, we'll give you 100% of your Google AdSense revenue, but we're going to try to put ads on more of your video views and we'll get like a 50-50 cut of that. And then we'll get a good cut of like any sponsorship opportunities we bring to you or any, if we make a series for you to star in, we'll get a cut of that. So they had a bunch of different lanes they were in, but it seems like around this time they realized creators didn't want them touching their AdSense. So a lot of deals were being proposed where it's like, hey, you get 100% of your AdSense. We want cuts of additional ads or other opportunities we bring you.
And they'd label it that way. They'd say, we're offering you a 100/0 deal. Like you get to get in with us here on this great deal. And that was their value prop, which was that they could get you better ad rates so that you could benefit from that as well. And you get 100% of all the ad revenue that you were going to make anyways through YouTube. But maybe this is a bit helpful context in terms of understanding kind of what it means to sign over, which, to be clear, I have never personally. So I have never seen through the back end what it looks like to work firsthand with an MCN. But right now on YouTube, I log into my analytics and I see what YouTube, is saying that they're estimating is the payout. And then I get that payout directly from Google or Alphabet or whatever. And I can like line it up and be like, that matches. But it's also them paying me directly. And MCN says, we'll take on that responsibility, and Google pays the MCN, and then the MCN does whatever they need to do under the arrangement, whether it's their deal was 90/10 or they need to recoup this or that under the agreement, and then they pay out the remainder as agreed upon to the creator. And in doing that, you lose control of direct access to your monetization payouts because it's ultimately at BBTV or the MCNs you sign with discretion to do things and take action. And this also goes back to a conversation we had like a year ago where we talked about copyright claims and like ads on your videos and how creators were upset with YouTube about how they couldn't like prevent certain political ads, for example, from appearing on YouTube because ultimately the MCN was in control of the monetization of their channel. If you are an independent creator and don't have an MCN, you can block ads as long as you have like the right address or the right URL. But an MCN maybe doesn't want to block ads because they're incentivized by the maximum amount of revenue. But you've given up that right. You've given up all your monetization rights to the MCN under this type of agreement.
Yeah, that's a really good concrete example because this comes up once in a while where a creator will very vocally get on social media and say, YouTube, I can't believe you're putting like gun ads on my videos or political ads. And some person managing a YouTube account will reply saying, here's how you can turn it off. And sometimes those people will be like, oh, well, my network manages this for me. And it's like, okay, you're blaming YouTube,
decision,
but your network then is deciding they're happy to make money off gun ads. So that's a you and your network problem. Don't blame YouTube for this.
I mean, you could still be, so maybe this is a bad example. You could still be upset with YouTube if they're choosing to sell gun ads. Bad example. But I just mean like in principle, ignore what the ad is about. Ultimately, the control is up to the monetizer. And if you sign away monetization permissions to someone else, to a third party, it's up to them.
So like I looked back at some of the conversations we had with a few people over the years, and yeah, ultimately I just don't think we would ever have accepted, and we articulated this to people, that like we could have imagined ourselves in a scenario where someone is literally just bringing us sponsorship deals and just getting a cut of that. But all these people wanted control of your AdSense, even in these 100-0 deals. So even if you're getting all their AdSense, because they want access to your channel also to place additional direct ad sales on them, partially. To get back to the H3 thing, his explanation for why they worked with an MCN is a little different. So when they started their YouTube channel, they lived in Israel. And he said when they set up their AdSense account there, it sort of forced them to just have to link it to an Israeli bank account or something like that. But basically, the TLDR is he would have had to create a new AdSense account in the US to receive their payments in US dollars into a US bank account. And to create a new AdSense account, the assumption was that you would have to shut off monetization of your channel at least for a period of time.
Well, it migrates over.
Yeah, maybe it's only a few days, but it could be a week or two. It could take some time. And then you're just gonna, if you have a business you're running, having no revenue coming in for 2 weeks is a scary thing, right? Yeah. I will say, like, for some context, H3, Ethan and Neela have talked before about how they had a really terrible experience with an MCN before this in like 2016 or 17, I think. I want to say it was Studio 71, but I'm not sure. They talked about it briefly just in this podcast today, where they had signed up with an MCN just to help them deal with like copyright claims because they were doing a lot of React content, I think. And the MCN made them a bunch of promises that they ultimately couldn't deliver on, and then tried to trap them into a contract. But I think they just eventually got out of it. So they already have this baggage of MCNs being dishonest or bad actors. So it seems really strange to me, this explanation that, I just decided to work with an MCN again just to help me, get my AdSense in US dollars instead of just migrating my AdSense.
I mean, I'm sure they regret that now, seeing as they did successfully migrate their AdSense over and it only took a day. Like if they had known that, they would have done this.
Sure, and I think they're still in the process of switching things over as of right now. But yeah, anyway, you're right. I'm not victim blaming or anything here. It's just, yeah, I'm sure they regret this decision too, because it seems like if that is your reason to work with an MCN, that doesn't seem like a great reason in retrospect. Anyway, so where are we in the recap?
So yeah, let's talk about what they're saying that BBTV did wrong and where the fundamental disagreement is.
All right. So yeah, the $600,000 that was stolen according to their interpretation. So what they're saying is that their MCN took $620,000 of skimmed from their channel memberships. So
channel memberships is different from ad revenue, because channel memberships is what someone who comes to your channel and clicks join and pays $5 if that's what it is per month.
So important context here. They signed their contract with BBTV in 2017. And it defines what they will get or what BBTV or H3 split in terms of their revenue. So it says they're going to get 100% of their Google net revenue from your videos. It's not disclosed what percentage they were going to take of sponsorships or branded content, but presumably that's where they would get most of their money. It says that H3 would get 75% of revenue from their content being posted on other platforms, meaning BBTV would get a 25% cut of that. And it says that H3 would get 70% of other net revenue, meaning anything that doesn't fall into those buckets and it falls into this other category, BBTV would get 30% of that. So I think important context and something I very much believe here is, according to Ethan and Neela, their negotiations about this contract were very clear that BBTV would only get a cut of like business or sponsorship opportunities they brought them.
Like one-off type of deals, yep.
Yeah, and that this idea of all the Google revenue going through to them was just like a very general good faith spirit of the agreement thing. And I totally believe that they were given a lot of reassurance that, yeah, don't worry, we're not touching your YouTube. you'll get all of that. We'll just get a cut of these other opportunities we bring you. But if we want to look at how things are actually defined in the contract.
Well, I think the first thing to point out is they signed the agreement and the contract that Ethan shared part of in 2017. That was before channel memberships were rolled out or even existed in 2018. Yes. So that's important because you're reading a contract that could not or that does not contemplate a future product. That doesn't mean a contract can't contemplate future things, because you can write things that don't exist yet. But it's important to just know that when reading the contract.
I think this is actually good advice here. Often contracts will try to future-proof themselves a bit, or someone writing a contract is trying to future-proof it, to contemplate, hey, if there's any other source of revenue we haven't considered here, here's how we could do it.
Yeah.
And then even in this example, it said, or the BBTV one approach is like, hey, anything else is 70% you, 30% us. Or as we may agree in writing to a different split. Mm-hmm. I think Ethan sort of incorrectly interpreted that in the agreement as saying, like, on a case-by-case basis, we have to agree to the percentage split on anything that falls into this other category. I think a normal contract reading of that clause, this doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but...
Yeah, it's kind of a...
No, but I think we're partly interested in this because we're like just interested in contracts and stuff, right?
I watch too many trials, and this is
we
a
have
business
background in law and criminology.
Yeah, and this is a business that directly, that I work in, and I've gotten a version of a BBTV contract back in 2016. I don't think it's exactly the same as Ethan's. I never signed it, but out of curiosity, I looked back at my own reference files for what types of language used. And I think that it's the language that matters here. Now, that being said, instead of playing like rational, what does the legal contract say? I think BBTV is acting in very bad faith. I think when they presented the original agreement to H3 in 2017, YouTube memberships were not around. So for them, it's not contemplated in the agreement. I think it's totally bad faith and bad spirit and bad business practices to just assume it's under a section later and never fucking mention it. That is shitty, and one of many examples of why people don't like the business practices of MCNs in general, because they feel duped by them, they feel that it was dishonest, and they feel that it was predatory or being taken advantage of. So I think this is one example of that type of behavior, and I don't think that's an unfair assessment of the situation. No defamation.
Okay, hey, I totally agree with you. This is the common sense reading of it that I think, in this case, the MCN, in my opinion, is being predatory and opportunistic and trying to use a technicality or loophole even to try to say, hey, this new revenue source, we want to...
They're not even saying it. That's my point. They just said nothing. Only when they're being challenged, they're like, fuck, how do we justify this? This is just me imagining what's going on. I don't think they really thought about it because it didn't exist. And then when they realized it, they're like, okay, say nothing. And then someone challenged them on it, and now they're forced to be like, how do we interpret this? Hey, legal, what can we say?
You think when that money started coming in, they didn't have conversations about this at the time? I don't believe that.
Sorry, I didn't mean they didn't have conversations, but I don't think that they necessarily told the future, in 2017. I don't think that they knew this.
No, it's not that they predicted this Patreon type model would exist on YouTube. Yeah. I think they just very conveniently interpreted this new revenue source as falling into other revenue because that was in their interest. And there was a tiny sliver of gray area in the contract that let them do that.
Well, is there gray area?
Okay, well,
let's discuss.
I hear you. And I want to do this because I think it's interesting and maybe helpful to people if you are ever going to have to sign contracts in your life. But I agree with you wanting to reiterate here that the common sense read of it, the sort of just good faith interpretation of what the parties meant to do. I'm not at all defending what BBTV is trying to do here, but I actually think there are some interesting technicalities in how things are defined and stuff that I think are worth pointing out just because it might help someone from signing a bad contract in the future even.
We're not lawyers. We just work in this business area. But I think, the reason why I've talked about sponsorship stuff and we have other podcasts on this type of topic is because I think there's at least a couple smaller creators out there who will benefit from hearing this. Not everyone can afford to hire a lawyer to review a minor contract sometimes. And it's just important to read and understand what you're signing, and also be able to call out, like if you have questions about the termination clause or the jurisdiction or the confidentiality component, it's important to understand these elements. So that's really why I'm just interested in this. So sorry, continue.
That's probably enough qualifiers.
What does it say? What does the wording say?
Okay, so their disagreement hinges on whether membership revenue falls into the other category, in which case BBTV can claim that 30% of it, or whether it falls under Google net revenue, or more specifically, Google subscriptions, which are included under Google net revenue.
Okay, so what's the definition of Google net revenue?
So Google net revenue is, for any period, means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in the period from Google ads and Google subscriptions with respect to your content on YouTube, less the following amounts charged, levied, pay, or payable, and just describes like taxes, fees, and things like that.
And now the definition of Google subscription.
So yeah, it includes, the short form of that is it includes revenue earned from Google ads and Google subscriptions. What are Google subscriptions? Google subscriptions means a subscription-based service on YouTube offered or facilitated by Google, whereby end users may access your videos, the timing and selection of which is at the end user's discretion, and for which the end user is charged a predetermined periodic fee to access such content as often as the end user selects during the period covered by the fee. For the avoidance of doubt, Google subscriptions includes the Google branded service, YouTube Red, and any successor or replacement thereof. Some context here. At this time, YouTube Red was a new thing. And it seems to me this clause was probably included primarily, it even identifies it and names it as being included, because YouTube Red was a pretty new thing at the time that replaced ad revenue you were getting on videos. So if these contracts were very much about like, hey, I want 100% of my ad revenue to come through to me, the contract should also include within that category YouTube Red, which at the time was, which is YouTube Premium now, basically, which is just like you pay a monthly fee so you don't have to watch ads on videos.
It's a subscription to YouTube's program to not see ads.
Not a membership or subscription to a specific
Right.
channel.
So they carved out YouTube Red, and which became YouTube Premium, so you could read that the same way. But if you ignore that last sentence, the definition of Google subscription in and of itself
Sounds like it's describing channel memberships.
sounds like a channel membership, because a channel membership is a fee paid by the user for access to the videos or content. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But like it sounds like it has all the elements of a channel membership.
Yeah, and when you have a channel membership, if you're a membership of, if you're a member of a channel on YouTube, it shows up in your inbox with a receipt saying Google subscription.
Right.
So, so like any common,
Exhibit A.
yeah, any sort of just common sense, non-legal read of this, even.
No, even a legal non-industry read of this, because that's what this will come down to ultimately if it does go to court.
So legally, I might say like 9 times out of 10, someone will agree that channel memberships falls under this definition. And I think 10 times out of 10, a normal person who just goes through life subscribing to things would think it falls under a normal definition of what a Google subscription is. I think there's just like that tiniest bit of technicality. Does it exactly meet this description? Because it didn't exist when this description was existed, and it doesn't specify.
This is what the other party, and that's why it's helpful to just explore this, because I think you should also look at what the counterpart is going to say. They're going to say potentially that
hypothetically
in Minecraft, in a block world, that it didn't say it includes or excludes YouTube channel memberships. Therefore, they're saying it's under the other category. And that's what the guy was basically suggesting in the call.
Other category is defined, and they showed this in their Monday podcast episode.
Do you have that there? The
Yeah,
definition
it says
of
other net revenue for any period means revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in such period from the distribution, monetization, and or exploitation of your content in a manner other than through the sale of Google ads, Google subscriptions, direct ads, other platform ads, or branded entertainment arrangements, but includes revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in connection with your content from, with respect to other platforms, subscription fees, and
other platforms,
subscription fees, and from with respect to any platform, including YouTube, rentals, in-app purchases, download to own methods of monetization, and monetization claimed, less amounts charged, levies, fees, yada, yada, yada. So they're saying if it's a rental, in-app purchase, or download to own method of monetization on YouTube even, then it would fall under this other net revenue.
I don't feel like it meets those three.
I don't think it does either. That's my read of it.
Yeah. It just doesn't work. Like, that specifically carves out subscriptions in the first two lines.
Yeah, and again, so it really does come down to how you interpret the definition of Google subscriptions under the contract. Mm-hmm. I think like maybe a takeaway here, I did include it. Like, it says BBTV under this contract would have been entitled to 70% of other net revenue, or as the parties may agree upon in writing on a case-by-case basis. I feel like this should have been written in a more explicit way to be like, if there's a brand new source of revenue, we have to talk and agree.
We have to agree upon it. And that's what's so confusing to me. And I'm sure they're learning, like BBTV is learning their lesson, and every other, provider similar to them, that if a new source of revenue arises, there needs to be one of two things. It needs to express what's going to happen with that, express that there's going to be a trigger in the agreement to trigger a new agreement related to that new thing, or a trigger to terminate and revise the agreement. There needs to be some contemplation of what happens between the parties when something brand new comes about that impacts both people. Not, in my opinion, what BBTV did, which was just conveniently ignore that this giant new source of revenue just arrived and conveniently decide to shelve it under it's the 70-30 split. And we never give you anything in writing or renewed the contract or explain the terms, which is interesting to me because they first signed this in 2017. And I think this type of agreement is just in writing, you just say, yeah, sure, another year basically. But at no point, or at least Ethan did not share at any point, that there was a new agreement that contemplated it. Because once YouTube channel memberships existed, I would assume that any new agreement that BBTV entered with future creators after 2018 contemplated channel memberships, right? They're not using the same old fucking contract.
No, I mean, we're speculating, but it is very likely that just if they had this agreement, it had a certain term, and there was an option to renew both parties.
So that's probably why he's had literally the same agreement for 5 years.
Yeah, whereas someone getting this contract today would at least know to ask, well, where does YouTube channel memberships fall under this? I don't think a ton of people are signing contracts with MCNs.
So it's probably just people whose contracts originally predate 2018 who may be affected by this. Because I would assume if they had a good legal on their side, that they would have contemplated YouTube memberships after the moment they were rolled out.
Yeah, assuming they have lawyers at all. I do need to just sort of qualify that. We don't know. We're hearing Ethan's side of this.
Yeah, we don't have the full contract, obviously. He did not share the full contract.
Because we don't know if they were provided anything to substantiate or identify that they were taking.
Oh, yeah. The disclosure, which is something I don't know how this works because I've never had an MCN pay me. So I wonder, and there's other creators out there who know the answer, but in practice, how does it work? Does an MCN give you a statement every month, the disclosure statement? Do they say the types of revenue at what percent, 100, 0, 70, 30? And does that documentation say specifically channel memberships at what rate?
Yeah, so we can only sort of speculate on this a bit, but in some of the stuff, Ethan leaked a phone call and emails and stuff. At one point, BBTV offered a bit of a defense saying hey, we've been taking this 30% cut for 2 years.
Is that a defense? We've been doing this without you really knowing. We've been
stealing your money for... Okay, but I guess from their perspective, they're trying to make an argument. Maybe it's bad faith. Maybe it's...
Yeah.
Their argument is that it's other revenue. We're entitled to 30%. And we've been taking it
since
and giving
December
you
2020.
Monthly statements showing that we've been taking it.
That's a good question, though, and this would be exhibit in the hypothetical court case. Did the financial statement say YouTube membership at 70%?
So yeah, I know Ethan responded to this as if that was an insane statement. Just because you've been stealing from me for 2 years doesn't justify the stealing, and of course it doesn't if it's stealing. But does it actually support BBTV's case at all to say? We have not been doing this secretly. We have been we are disclosing to you every month that we take this.
And that's what I think would need to be proven is, was there disclosure that was specific enough to isolate channel memberships as opposed to just 70 other? If it just says 70 other, that's not
and
good.
You have just no idea.
They don't get any points of that. If
also,
they're trying to
again,
prove
to
their side.
like take the legal lens off of this, there's absolutely nothing an MCN is doing for you that is helping facilitate or gain channel memberships, presumably.
I don't think so.
Like in what universe is
can't think of
BBTV helping them get channel members? So like what is the consideration? What sort of exchange is happening here that entitles them to any cut of channel memberships?
Do they say that they help advertise you like as a creator? Do they like put you on billboards? I'm just guessing here. I don't know. Like, what do they do?
I think it's the opposite, and I think Ethan touched on this a bit too.
That works in BBTV's favor because
we've been to VidCons or industry events. I remember it was so bizarre. We walked into some space at like the Creator Hotel at a VidCon one year. This must have been 2018 or 19. And we walk into this sort of convention hall, and there's a BBTV booth. And there's a big poster with FouseyTube and Ethan and Hila on it. And it was like, what the hell are those three people doing on a poster together? It was super bizarre.
Just hanging out.
But it was obvious that like for any MCN, having a creator as established and popular as H3 or FouseyTube at the time was a big deal to be like, these are creators on our roster. Here's our press release. Here's our pamphlets. And they were using it literally in that context to try to appeal to other creators of joining their network.
And that's exactly what happened in every email I ever received from everyone, including BBTV. They would cite, like, we work with X and X, and you should, look into us because we've helped X and X grow their channel. And so that's why it's so important as a creator to also consider, do you want to be the inadvertent, indirect face of something? Do you want to be used as an example that you work with company X when company X goes to solicit new talent? Yeah. It's always something to consider when you sign an agreement. Are you proud? Are you happy to be working with the company in whatever capacity? Because if they say, hey, we've worked with this person, is that going to make you feel upset or weird about it? Then it's something to consider.
Mm-hmm. What's kind of funny, and I've alluded to this already, but Ethan's just sort of going Scorched Earth.
And he doesn't care anymore. But I don't know. I feel like he's been through so many lawsuits, and he's kind of detailed this on his podcast, like a bunch of fair use cases.
He's like leaking
defamation cases.
He's leaking contracts and phone calls and things in 99% of normal circumstances would be insane to do, and really probably put you in a position of weakness. I think here it's clearly the case. He seems to have come to a conclusion that BBTV is never going to pay them. Mm-hmm. Some context here is that they're probably in financial trouble. Their share price is way down. They have a lot of debt. His speculation...
We saw this happen with Defy. It wouldn't be that shocking to see it happen.
His speculation is they don't have the money, and that he's never going to see that money. So he's almost just treating this as content, that he wants to sue them for content and leak their emails from their lawyers for content. And I mean,
he shouldn't say that because that won't play well with courts.
But I don't think this is ever even really going to... If they just declare bankrupt, there's a good chance he never sees that money, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. He's never going to see this, I don't think. But if I'm in his position, this is all fun to like show right now. But I don't know, is there a consequence of like other people looking at you as the kind of person who's just going to like leak contracts and things if you ever have a contractual dispute? I feel like most people would not do what he's doing right now.
I think it's I understand what you're saying, and this is like really hard to articulate. Maybe I can try and do this from the position that like people know me, the people who watch me know me as someone who's like tends to be careful with the words I choose to put on the internet. And when we've had a disagreement with a business or someone it hasn't worked out, I tend not to bring that up. I try to resolve it privately is to the best of my ability. It's a business style. Different people have different business styles. I think most people that I've met in business have the style I generally just described, which is try and keep things civil, try and keep things between the parties, and not go scorched earth. I mean, unless there's like some egregious circumstance, which there always could be. Sure. And it's a stylistic choice. It's a way of doing
it's a
business.
Choice.
Now, that being said, we live on this platform, YouTube. Thank you, Susan. Where content is king. Where people, the viewers, you guys as well, us, even just like something within us craves.
I mean, we're talking about it too.
Craves content. We want to hear about it. We want the receipts. We want to see behind the scenes of how this business works. We think it's a learning experience. It's also just entertainment. So I think that someone like Ethan has put so much of his life, including his lawsuits, on the internet, and a lot of that has turned to good, where other content creators, I'm sure, have learned lots of lessons from his pursuits in legal. So I think I think there's a value in some of this being shared for education purposes. I also think we'd all be lying to ourselves if we said like there wasn't anything that was fun about doing this. I think people think it's
sure
fun,
it's satisfying,
and I'm sure he like realizes that he's a content creator, so he realizes that sharing this and writing, kind of crazy things in his email to BBTV, he knows that he's going to share this on his stream and get like a good reaction from his audience. So.
Yeah, it's almost like being sued and suing people has just become like core to their content, which is must be a very stressful.
But I mean, if he's accepted that and he wants to do that and he doesn't mind it and that's his course of action, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we could sit here and be like, oh, he's probably in breach of contract. Like, there's almost certainly a non-disparagement clause in there.
A confidentiality clause.
But like, if your counterparty stole $600,000
then
to you,
don't care.
those breaches don't really seem all that relevant in context. In terms of him getting the money back, they are a Canadian company.
Objection, jurisdiction.
He's already said he'd have to hire a Canadian lawyer.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, most people wouldn't talk about this. Have we ever talked about this? That there was a company that owed you money at one point that went through. I should have done this. They went through, in Canada, it's creditor protection, not bankruptcy. And like after like a year and a half or 2 years, eventually this company owed you like over $100,000 and you ultimately got like, what, 20% of that or something. So we do have a little bit of experience there. In that case, it was more just that they were going through a financial hardship. It wasn't bad faith contract
So
stuff.
The reason is different. So I don't think if the equivalent thing happened to Ethan, he would have maybe he would have made a podcast out of it. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. But yeah, I think the business style is different. And I think Ethan prioritizes his content, his story.
He's got content brain.
Him telling his audience, the truth, which like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just a different style of doing business, which is a different consideration that people in the background are going to have if anyone is considering working with him.
And it's funny to see like the lawyer or in-house counsel for BBTV or whoever that was emailing him is clearly trying to be like, hey, like you talking about this publicly isn't helping us. And I presume they mean like helping us reach some sort of resolution here. Yeah. Because they're still working in the universe of like, hey, maybe there's something to negotiate or work out. Like, it almost seemed to me like they were like, oh, fuck, these people will actually sue us. Maybe they would have tried to give them the money if they had the money. But at that point, Ethan's sending them emails just goofing on them. And you can tell, like, the person on the other side, like, probably has no idea how to respond to someone who's just like, I'm not playing the game you want to play.
That's not someone or a behavior you normally come across in this type of business.
Very abnormal. It's content brain behavior.
It's content. It's brain rotted content brain behavior. Like, if I got emails like that from a company that I was working with, I would think they're like recording and doing a gaffe or something like on the other end. I'm like, there's got to be a reason. Yeah. But that's exactly what Ethan is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why this is just like the Tetris movie?
What?
Because that was all about
why is this just like
poorly
Tetris,
worded contracts. We watched the Tetris movie the other day. Did you fall asleep or you hated it?
Ben watched the Tetris movie.
I watched the Tetris movie. Didn't like the movie, but I found the subject matter interesting. Maybe you would too.
Okay.
Because it's really just about the licensing rights to a video game that was created in the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union is very closed off from like actually engaging in business with the Western world at the time. And It's just like arguments about the contracts and who actually had the rights to license and sub-license the game, and whether the creator of the game had any sort of right to benefit monetarily from the game he created because he was an employee of like a Soviet Union like computer programming agency when he made it after hours. So like the subject matter of actually was really interesting because it came down to like the wording of, at one point someone thought that some like European businessman thought he had the license and gave the license to someone in the UK and Japan, but it defined he had the license for computers and other types of computers, and he used that to conclude he could license it to people for like home entertainment gaming consoles.
So were consoles not invented yet at the time of this agreement?
So they were like in their very earliest form,
but it wasn't contemplated.
But he
yet.
just conveniently thought like, other types of computers includes consoles.
Like other net revenue includes channel memberships.
What it definitely didn't include is handheld video games, like the Game Boy, which was about to come out. So when he goes back to the Soviet Union to try to get the rights to sell it on handheld video games like the Game Boy, the Soviets now realize that he's been selling it on gaming consoles by interpreting computer games as gaming consoles. So the Soviets like pressure him into signing a new contract, which specifically defines that his previous computer rights now don't even extend to gaming consoles. So anyway, like this whole movie is really just about like disputes over language in contracts, which was interesting. But they tried to make the movie like, here's a sexy KGB agent and we're on car chases running to the airport. It felt like a movie that like didn't think people would find the actual substance of the story interesting enough. So let's fluff it up with random video game car chases and things. And hey, I'm probably wrong. Most people are like, I don't want to watch a 2-hour drama about interpreting.
But I did.
But I do,
I
and
wanted
you
to
do.
watch like the raw footage or something. Do you have the trial, sir?
Can I read the original Tetris
Give
contract?
me the transcript. Give me the full contract.
But again, this is all comes down like we've got Ethan has content brain. We have contract brain.
Contract brain or content? Content brain.
It's a problem we have. But anyway, all this comes down to, hey, maybe you're somewhere in life. Someone's going to hand you a piece of paper and say, sign this. You should read it. You should know what you're doing. Yeah. You should probably not sign away monetization of your channel to somebody. And if they tell you something really sweet and then they hand you a piece of paper that says something different, you should probably notice that.
You know what's helpful is asking them and figuring out how they make their money. What's the upside for them? Because when an MCN comes to you and they're like, you get 100, we get 0. It's amazing. It's like, okay, like, what?
Well, they were clear about how they made their money.
Yeah, but it's like, how can they take advantage of that situation? And also giving up ownership and control of anything, whether it's your content, your IP, your the way you make money and receive money. Like that's a huge... you're giving away a lot of control in some of these situations. And I think that is an expense that you should consider in your calculus for whether you want to sign the contract. Like that's not really contemplated in the agreement, like how much that's worth, that they get to own the means of your fucking revenue and decide if they go, like what happened with Defy, if they go bankrupt, they're just not paying it out. And all of a sudden you're at that mercy. But again, so that's a calculus you need to consider.
But a lot of creators did make that calculation and decide.
It was years ago, yeah.
It was worth the extra revenue they could have gotten, or they at least made that calculated risk. I feel like we've always swung in the opposite direction, but to look at it the opposite way, like you left a lot of money on the table.
I didn't have a lot of sponsorships. I didn't get extra ads placed on my videos, but I also continued to control and know 100% that it was Google paying me and no one was skimming.
And I think it's easy for us to live with that decision, to know that like you probably could have made a few million more dollars, but it may have come at the cost of you really knowing that you owned the rights to all your stuff and had complete control over what you wanted to do with your channels.
A business that I don't know a lot about. And I did not know a lot about these businesses and how they operate in 2016 when I was fresh and new on YouTube and was like, what the fuck is all this shit? And all these people are throwing money. And they try and get you with these fucking startup bonuses. Like, we'll give you these X thousands of dollars for a travel bonus, thousands of dollars for a signing bonus. You don't have to do anything. Just sign and we'll give you these thousands of dollars. And I can only imagine how attractive that is to, you know, a younger person who just kind of got their head start. It's crazy. You know, what's also interesting.
And it might not even be the worst decision for everyone. Like
Yeah, I know. We're speaking from a place of we've now had 8 years of experience, and we've seen so many examples of people having fallouts. So that's where we're coming from.
It's not like we've been perfect, right? We've had our things. There's things I do differently as well.
Do you want to know what's crazy with some of these agreements, though? Is I looked back at some of my MCN offers, and there's a page in there that's like for the guardian, because it also contemplates signing a child or someone who's under 18. And it's like, oh, this is what your parent has to sign, just, you know, to make sure. And it's like the fact that, like, I've never seen an agreement other than ones from MCNs where that's even been a page. Because normally in businesses we do, like, they don't expect that who they're working with is a child. And it's just like, it reifies kind of the predatory nature of it all. That is like a whole other conversation about children on YouTube. But yeah, I don't know.
That's fun.
Yeah, lovely note there.
Okay, well.
Anyways, I hope that it gets resolved. I think at this point,
it's not gonna get resolved.
I mean, yeah, that's too optimistic. I retract my statement. I think Ethan has made his decision that he wants it for content. That doesn't mean he wasn't
Content
seriously hopeful
to get the money
back. I agree
it's a lot of money.
That BBTV's interpretation of the contract is in total bad faith. And I think they fucking use that to their advantage.
In Minecraft.
In Minecraft for the last 2 years, skimming off the top of revenue that was never outlined as theirs. And they just took advantage of that. And that's pretty fucked up.
Yep.
So.
That's it. That's all.
What now?
We end the podcast?
What now?
What do you mean, what now?
I don't know.
You want to talk about something else?
No? Okay.
All right. I got Joker Brain. We'll see you next Taco Tuesday.
All right, everybody. See you on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday, Ben.
Okay, we got to figure out how to end these better.
Why?
I don't know.
Why can't they come on Saturday?
They could come on Saturday. Help me end the podcast.
On Saturday. Because we'll end the podcast on Saturday. We'll see you then. Don't forget. All right, everyone. This Saturday, holotaco.com or my stream on SimplyNotLogical. Biggest drop, Holo royalty. And Holo loyalty sale. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see y'all later. Bye. Bye.